known as one of the most beautiful churches in America. This church was built by poor immigrant Poles more than 125 years ago, and everything you see in this church shows the devotion and love of the people for God.
حفظ الله بولونيا. هذا المكان مخصص لمجد الله العظيم. بهاتين العبارتين تستقبلك كنيسة سانت جون كانتيوس في شيكاغو، إلينوي. ترتفع بمهابة وسط المدينة بأعمدتها الخارجية وواجهتها الحجرية على طراز عصر النهضة وبقببها الفولاذية. بنيت على غرار كاتدرائية سانت ماري في كراكوف وعلى شفاعة القديس جون كانتيوس. هي من عوامل هجرة الشعب البولندي إلى الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية الذي استقر جزء منه في تلك المنطقة التي باتت تعرف باسم وينانا بولسكا، أي منطقة المغتربين البولنديين. وكان لابد لذلك الشعب من إنشاء كنيسة يعيش فيها أبعاد إيمانه. ورأى الأب فينسنت بارزينسكي إنه لابد من تحقيق مطالب الشعب، فاشترى قطعة أرض وعين الأب جون كاسبرسكي لإتمام المهمة. وبدأ المهندس أدولف درودينغ رسم الخرائط ووضع الخطط للبدء بعملية البناء في ربيع 1893. في كانون الأول 1893 كانت الجماعة تقيم قداس عيد الميلاد في الطابق السفلي للكنيسة. مع حلول آذار 1898 اكتمل البناء وبدأ عصر الازدهار في الرعية. ففي عام 1918 بلغ عدد أبناء الرعية 23,000 وعدد طلاب المدرسة التابعة للكنيسة 25,000 طالب. وسجلت هذه الكنيسة نجاحاً باهراً على كافة الأصعدة الروحية، التربوية والرعوية. عشرينيات القرن الماضي لم تكن خيراً على الكنيسة، فإقامة شارع أوغدن وافتتاح طريق كندي السريع أديا إلى تهجير الرعية، فانخفض عدد أبنائها والمقيمين حولها. إلا أن مواظبة بعض المؤمنين على المشاركة في القداس والحياة الرعوية كتبا الاستمرارية لها.
St. John Cantius Church was built in 1893. It was one of the largest Polish immigrant churches in America. When this church was at its heyday, there were 22,000 parishioners and 12 Sunday Masses. That was in 1918. The parish was a center of life for the immigrants where they made their home here. We not only had this church with 22,000 parishioners, we had a school next door with 2,000 children, a convent with 40 nuns, and a rectory with 14 priests and brothers. And so the history of the church is incredibly fascinating. By the time the church began to grow through the years, it really fell into disrepair. And by 1988, this church only had 40 people and one Mass on Sunday, so the church was going to be closed down. But thanks be to God, we had a pastor who came here who had a vision of seeing the beauty of the church, that this church can rise to life again. And so he used the old ways, beautiful tradition, chant, art, music, the Latin Mass, and people started coming from all over. Today, our parish has 3,000 families, it has 8 choirs, and Chicago's first religious order.
في 15 آب 1988 ليلة عيد انتقال السيدة العذراء تسلم الرعية الأب فرانك فيليبس، فعمل على إعادة هذه الكنيسة إلى مجدها القديم، ليس من جهة العمران والبناء بل أيضاً من الناحية الرعوية والليتورجية، وتظهر نشاطاتها المبرمجة إلكترونياً على موقعها الرسمي مدى التنظيم والازدهار في كافة المرافق والحياة الكنسية.
Father Phillips began a great restoration over 30 years, and everything you see here is that restoration of 30 years, the love of building the church and making it beautiful again. And so it's been a great project. The last restoration that you see is bringing the church exactly to how it was 125 years ago, recognizing the faith of the Polish immigrants who built the church, and just using beauty, using the art to draw people to God. Today, people don't want a church that looks like Pizza Hut, we say in America. We want a church that's beautiful. We want to be amazed by the goodness and beauty of God. And so, as St. Augustine says, when you step into a church, it should make you homesick for heaven. And that's what St. John Cantius does.
فإلى جانب القداسات والرتب الليتورجية ومتابعة السنة الطقسية، هناك التثقيف الديني والتعليم والنشاطات الاجتماعية والإنسانية والجمعيات المخصصة للصلوات والتكريمات لسر القربان ولوالدة الإله ولشفاعة القديسين.
You can see now we are in front of St. Joseph's altar, these beautiful altars that were handcrafted in wood, made by the Polish immigrants, really giving everything they had to the glory of God. Beautiful painting of St. Joseph. In this church we have beautiful stained glass windows, some of them from Munich, Germany. There's one beautiful rose window which you will see, which is the seven sacraments. So you can see St. Peter, it goes through the baptism, confirmation, Eucharist, holy orders, matrimony, all the way around. This window is an incredible catechesis, but people learn the faith by looking at art, but it also helps to bring us and catch us up toward heaven.
وللمحافظة على استمرارية الحياة الرعوية، عمل الأب فيليبس بمباركة رئيس أساقفة المدينة الكاردينال جورج على تأسيس جمعية رهبانية تضم عدداً من الإخوة والكهنة على اسم وشفاعة القديس كانتيوس، وتؤمن خدمة الرعية وشعب الله مستمد القوة من يسوع المعلم الأول، متبعة روحانية ومثال كانتيوس في الخدمة والإيمان، وتساعد المؤمنين على اكتشاف الإحساس العميق بالمقدسات.
You will see behind me this beautiful image of the Divine Mercy. It has an incredible story. There was one young woman who came to this church, and she was an atheist. She didn't believe in God, but she was a professor of art here in Chicago. But she came to this church, she experienced the power of beauty, and she had a powerful conversion. She was baptized here at this baptismal font. She became Catholic, and later on in Thanksgiving, she painted this beautiful image of the Divine Mercy, showing about what the mercy of God can do. So it's an example. Art, beauty, these things bring us to God, just like it did for this young woman.
الكنيسة اليوم هي مركز إشعاع روحي حضاري وتاريخي ببنائها الضخم والفخم. هندستها الداخلية شبيهة بمختلف الكنائس البولندية المهاجرة إلى أمريكا الشمالية، وهي تتبع هندسة العصر الباروكي. أعمدة ضخمة، تماثيل، مذابح، أيقونات، جداريات ضخمة، فنون الزجاج الملون الفيتراي، لكل زاوية قصة وهندسة خاصة. 3 أماكن لا يمكن غض النظر عنها: المذبح الجانبي للجهة الأمامية من الكنيسة وقرب المدخل، ذلك المزار المريمي رائعة فيتستوس والمنقول عن كاتدرائية سانت ماري في كراكوفيا، والذي يشكل أكبر مذبح قوطي في العالم.
I'm very happy to welcome you to this beautiful chapel. There's many hidden treasures in this church, but this chapel is very special. When the immigrants left Poland for Chicago, one of the last things they saw was this altarpiece. The original is in St. Mary's Basilica in Krakow, Poland. It was carved in 1472. It's an incredible piece of art, and in a few moments I'm going to show you inside. But first I will tell you that the artist who did this artwork, it was in 1472, was paid 1 year's budget by the entire city of Krakow to carve this. It took him 14 years to complete. What does it show? Well, we can see below the tree of Jesse. You see there, Jesse, and there is the tree of Jesse, all the kings, patriarchs, prophets, the fruit of the tree. And the fruit of the tree, which you'll see in this beautiful carved wood art, is the Virgin Mary.
يمثل هذا المجسم الرائع مجسم ستوس كصورة منقولة طبق الأصل وبأمانة وجدارة وفن، ولكنه يشكل قياس السلس عن المجسم الأساسي. نفذ هذا العمل الرائع من رمم المجسم الأصلي، ومن هنا اكتسب الجدارة في استنساخ مجسم مماثل.
Here is the Virgin Mary surrounded by the 12 apostles. and then her assumption into heaven, and way up top, her coronation. People come into this chapel to pray to Mary. We call this room the room of tears because art brings us into deeper communion with God. I've had many people, atheists, people who are not Catholic, come here and they have an experience of seeing the beauty of the church. So all carved wood, painted and gilded with real gold. But this altar, we still say Mass on this altar, and we use it for private devotions. It's a very special place.
تسمى الغرفة التي تحوي هذا المجسم المريمي والذي يروي بتصاميمه العديد من مراحل حياة العذراء مريم غرفة الدموع.
This altarpiece was finished in 2003, so it's a new one, and it's only 1/3 the size. The original in Krakow, Poland is 3 times the size, so this is still the world's largest replica. It shows many scenes in the life of Jesus and Mary. Remember, when people didn't read, they had to learn the faith, and so they learned about the Annunciation, the birth of Jesus, the adoration of the Magi. All the story of the faith is contained in this altarpiece. It was almost like a little Bible with pages. You see how the pages move. So you would learn about our Lord's crucifixion, His being taken down from the cross, being laid in the tomb. This is how people learned the faith. So for 100 years in Krakow, people flocked to this city and witnessed this great altarpiece. And we're very proud to have this copy here in Chicago.
ويعتبر هذا المجسم تحفة فنية رائعة وهدية قدمت كهدية عام 2003 للبولنديين مؤسسي الكنيسة كعربون شكر ورمز لنضال الشعب البولندي وثباته ونضاله لأجل إيمانه ولتأسيسه هذه الكنيسة.
The original altarpiece in Krakow, Poland was made by Vít Stos. He was the best carver in the world. He was German. And they brought him to the city of Krakow in Poland to work for 14 years. But this replica was made in 2003 by a Polish artist, Michał Batkiewicz. Most people don't realize, but when Hitler invaded Poland during World War II, he stole this altarpiece and he hid it in a cave. And it was missing for almost 40 years. And so the artist who worked on the restoration created this replica, which we see before us today. I am a very dear friend of Saint Charbel. I've known his story for many years, and I know the Maronite rite is a very special rite in the church, and that faith is so powerful. You know, it's a faith that is soaked with the blood of many martyrs. Pope Benedict XVI said that the faith must not only be known, but it's also loved. So it has to be both and. And when you see the Maronite liturgy, you see the similar beauty. I think this is something us Catholics in the Latin rite need to return to, is that beauty of the expression of the faith. That we not only connect people's minds, but we connect people's hearts to God.
مكان آخر يستوجب الوقوف عنده غرفة الذخائر المليئة بذخائر القديسين من أوروبا ومن مختلف أنحاء العالم والمحفوظة بعناية جانب الكنيسة تشعرك برهبة ومعنى القداسة.
St. John Cantius is so privileged to have thousands of relics. In the last 50 years, many people didn't care about relics. They put them in antique shops, or they sold them, or they were in attics, or threw them in the garbage. But in our church, we've collected many of these relics. The relics are from saints all around the world. So we have even an entire body, the entire bones of one saint, Saint Simplicius, as well as bones and relics of many saints. And relics really are a part of a saint that we hold, we revere, because it brings us into closer reality. Like, this saint really existed. He overcame sin, he overcame death. And that's one of the beautiful things about relics. So on All Saints' Day, November 1st at this church, relics are all around the church with candles and flowers, and people are brought to experience really their lives and their intercession.
وأيضاً لابد من الوقوف أمام ذلك الأورج الضخم الذي يمد الخدمات الليتورجية من الإفخارستية والقداسات والزياحات بأهم الأنغام الموسيقية والتي تختصر مجد الموسيقى الكنسية وعظمة المؤلفات والمؤلفين. جوقات ثمان تتابع خدمة الكنيسة وتقيم الريسيتالات وتنظم الاحتفالات.
Here at St. John Cantius, one of the very important things is sacred music. Sacred music helps elevate the mind to God. And at this parish we have 8 choirs. Not to mention this organ, which in the church has almost 5,000 pipes. So we have the organ above us as well as the organ which plays on the side. When you're here for the Mass, you can feel the music through your very soul. So at this church we play Mozart, Haydn, Bach, Dvorak, Palestrina, Gregorian chant. And many people who come for concerts at this church don't realize that they're not coming for a concert, but they're coming for a Mass, because the music is meant to glorify God. So music is a very important part of our church. It's all part of our mission of restoring the sacred. To restore the sacred means to bring back what was lost, to make the church beautiful again. And that's something we want to do through the many elements here at St. John Cantius.
بملء الحب والخدمة والروح الرعوية من دون إهمال الجانب الثقافي والفني، يعيش كهنة الرعية ملء رسالتهم مع المؤمنين. وتجدر الإشارة إلى أن شفيع الكنيسة جون كانتيوس هو قديس بولندي ولد في بلدة كنتي عام 1930 وتوفي عام 1473 عن عمر يناهز 83 سنة.
The painting behind me shows a powerful miracle. This young girl is crossing the square in Krakow, Poland, and Father John Kenty, who was a teacher at the University of Krakow, he found this girl and she was crying because she tripped and she broke this jug of milk that she was going to sell at the marketplace. Well, Father John was known for his love. So he picked up the pieces of the jug, he put it back together. You can see in the picture that the pieces are coming back together. And then Father John said, "Take this jug to the river, fill it with water, and bring it back to me." Once Father John did that, he blessed the water, which turned to rich, sweet milk. And so it's a story about restoration. St. John Cantius is a saint who restores what is broken. And so the motto of this church and the motto of this religious order is about putting together what is broken in society. So every Sunday at this church, we hear 700 confessions, people who are coming into this church with broken hearts. And through the sacrament of confession, through God's grace, they're being healed. But it's not just about, of course, the human being, but it's about the church itself. This church was going to be destroyed. This church was broken, but it was put back together, made beautiful again. And so here we are with St. John Cantius, our patron saint.
كان كاهناً وأستاذاً في الكتب المقدسة وعالماً في الفيزياء. عرف بتواضعه وحبه للفقراء وعطفه عليهم. عاش طيلة عمره في الجامعة ومات فيها، تاركاً العديد من المخطوطات والمؤلفات والكتابات. ورغم ذلك عرف بتصوفه وطريقة عيش فريدة من نوعها. كان معلماً روحياً وشفيعاً للبابا القديس يوحنا بولس الثاني، الذي كان يصلي على قبره ويستلهم منه العبر الروحية.
Just like the story of St. John Cantius and the young girl whose jug was restored, St. John Cantius restores people's hearts. It puts them back together. And that's what we want to do. Our religious order, we have 30 priests and brothers here at this church, and we are restoring the broken hearts through God's grace. First, through confession, and second, through the holy sacrifice of the Mass.
هنا في هذه الكنيسة، كنيسة سانت جون كانتيوس، يعيش الأمريكيون ولا سيما المتحدرون من أصول بولندية حكاية إيمان عمره 2000 سنة وأكثر. يواجهون تحديات معاصرة، يسعون إلى إعادة ما هو مقدس، ويعملون على تقديس ذواتهم والحفاظ على هذا الإيمان من جيل إلى جيل.